Welcome back, trainers. We are here. I am Tyson, joined here by Choppa here for our Collectors Emporium Cup. Collectors Cup, Mega Cup. Sorry, excuse me. The Collectors Emporium Mega Cup. We are here back for some more VGC action. We're here on our round 2 of our 5-round day into a top cut. I'm super excited to get into round 2, but before we do we want to remind our players here what they're competing for?
Yes, we are competing for up to $500 in prizing, a booster box, 50 championship points, and I believe also 50% of store credit for first place. Really a lot of the line here. Of course, our other top competitors going to be walking away with a lot of lovely prizes as well. Of course, need to have such a great prize because of how strong the competition is going to be today. This is our second round in a row featuring a player who recently top cut a regional. Last round was Joe. Like you said, hardly needs an introduction. This round is going to be Ian Lee, who recently got a top 16 in Vancouver, I believe, facing off against Corey Conlon. We'll have those teams up for you very soon, but we're going to be seeing one more standard team and then one something maybe a little bit more off-meta this round.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing about this, again, is the prizing, right? This is a mega cup for a reason. There's tons on the line for our players here. And even if there was no prizing with the level of competition that Tri-State offers always, there's a level of pride on the line always with these players as well. You get to play really good games of Pokemon against really good players. And it's good practice, too, with even if you're not playing any more Regulation G, Pokemon is still Pokemon. A lot of those VGC fundamentals bleed over into something like Regulation I, especially with the restricteds. Even if the single restricted isn't the same as double restricted, a lot of how the restricteds function and what they kind of do in their roles on teams kind of blends over into Regulation I. So even if you're looking forward to Regulation I, there's tons of action here for you guys to see today.
Yeah, staying fresh, playing in local events, playing in online grassroots like all the great ones that people like Victory Road host on the weekends is just so important. I think it's no surprise that a lot of our top players are just doing local events or doing grassroots events like that almost every weekend. Pokemon is something that really demands a lot of muscle memory, and you build it up by playing events all the time.
And we're building a community here as well. So, of course, a huge shout out to all the production and staff here working at the Mega Cup today. This wouldn't be possible without them as well. Something like this doesn't really happen too often. So showing support where you can, sharing this stream, making sure you like and subscribe and all that fun junk, making sure that you are supporting the stream so that we can put on more events like this for you guys to watch. It's really, really important.
Yeah. All right, we will head into team preview soon, too, here. I think we're just getting a little sneak preview down here of some of the teams we will be looking at this round. Like I said, there's an Okie Dokie, but we're also going to see it's friends with another very powerful dog, a Zacian.
Yeah, Zacian is not something you get to see very often. I believe the only Zacian player, the most well-known, I want to say, is King Campbell, who I believe got top 8. I forget at what regional, but with Zacian was kind of the notable thing. And Zacian's a unique Pokemon, right? Because in Sword and Shield, back when we had that double restrict, as we mentioned before in 22, Zacian was kind of the top dog, pun intended there. With that Intrepid Sword boost, being able to get +1, it was nerfed in going into Scarlet and Violet. Not only was the boost is still the same. You get +1 attack, but it's only on your first switch in. So if you switch Zacian out and then switch it back in, it loses that +1 boost, and you no longer get it for the rest of the fight. And then on top of that as well, Zacian's actual stats were nerfed as well, just making sure this dog does not stay on top forever, because if you watch 22 gameplay, it was on every team.
Yeah, if you watch 2022 gameplay, I think it's clear that Zacian maybe need a little bit of that nerfing. However, it's still going to be a really powerful Pokemon. The current format, kind of one of the underdogs for the time being. However, moving into Regulation I expect to see a lot more Zacian. I think even pairing it with something like Okie Dokie is like probably not the last time we'll see this pairing. That guard dog ability acting a little bit like the famous Defiant, giving you a boost when your opponent tries to intimidate you. That's exactly the kind of thing that you want to have when your primary Pokemon, your build around, is a little bit susceptible to intimidate. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen here. I think we're seeing, I guess we haven't talked about Ian's team so much yet. It is a little bit more standard with stuff like the Calyrex Shadow and the Smeargle pairing. This is a team that I think Ian has really been focusing on for a long time. It's a team that he and other players have found a lot of success with in the late Regulation G format, just kind of going all out with Smeargle as a support Pokemon for Calyrex Shadow, which might as well be the best setup sweeper in the game.
Yeah, and I think something like the Smeargle is always worth talking about because Smeargle is personally one of my favorite Pokemon, even though it's very annoying. Just the fact that Smeargle can be whatever it wants and do whatever it wants is kind of cool to me. Being able to have every move in the game potentially is super fun. Of course, it's annoying for a lot of people. Being that normal type, though, on something like the Calyrex Shadow team is very, very nice because you're immune to something like opposing Astral Barrage, and having access to something like the Fast Spore and the Wide Guard is really, really helpful in the mirror, where usually it comes down to how the other trainers train their Calyrex or how you position your other pieces. So that, that Smeargle is a really helpful piece at giving you that upper edge in something like the mirror, but even in something that's not the mirror, that fake out, that fast fake out, and that fast spore is going to be very, very helpful. And of course, Follow Me, one of the best moves in VGC.
I can see this being a pretty good matchup for Smeargle, too, because Christopher's team doesn't have a lot of Pokemon that are going to be able to do anything to ignore that fake out. We have Covert Cloak on the Tornadus. That is literally it. None of these other Pokemon can do something to get around a fake out. There's not a ton of, spread hits that are going to be able to ignore that Follow Me. So I think if you're bringing your Smeargle to something, it might be a game like this.
Yeah, and I'm Ian's team is so good, but I'm so drawn to something like Christopher's Rotom Wash. But we do have leads from both of our players here. Ian Lee is going to lead off with the Smeargle and the Calyrex Shadow, and Chris here is going to lead off with the Tornadus and the Zacian.
I think something like a fake out into a Zacian feels very telegraphed from this lead, but it would leave Tornadus open to do whatever it wants, whether that's something like a Taunt onto the Calyrex, Taunt onto the Smeargle, Bleak Wind for damage. Torn really has a lot of options here.
Yeah, and Tornadus being able to go for that taunt is very nice. Something like that Terra Dark there on the Tornadus that makes sure something like the Astral Barrage from Ian Lee's Astral Barrage isn't doing nearly as much damage to your Tornadus is going to be very, very important. Getting a taunt into this Smeargle while it has the opportunity to, considering it doesn't have something like the Protect or Spiky Shield, is not going to be able to avoid this taunt. Protect from the Zacian there, just avoiding any potential double up from a fake out and a Astral Barrage. As you see Ian go for that fake out there, assumably going for an Astral Barrage to follow it up. Chris going for that taunt there, that Terra Dark taunt into this Miracle, not allowing to go for Follow Me's, Wide Guards, or Spores anymore, as Calyrex actually opts for a nasty plot, which I think is a super smart play from Ian, allowing you to bait out a Terrestrialization from the Tornadus and a potential Protect from the Zacian. You kind of don't lose anything that turn other than a Bleak Winds drop from Tornadus potentially.
It looks like we saw Smeargle get a speed boost from Moody, but it essentially doesn't matter. This is a taunted Smeargle. It has used Fake Out already. I think Smeargle is probably going to have to be leaving the field to come in for another support for this Calyrex, because you don't exactly want to leave your Calyrex open to something like a Behemoth Blade here. I think that was a pretty good play on Chris' ends because he's really keeping up the pressure on this Calyrex. I'm curious what Ian is going to be swapping in to try and resolve the pressure of this Zacian, because Smeargle is not going to be solving his problems right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually really interesting in this matchup as well, as Chris has one of these important pieces. We kind of talk about Ian's team and how it's a little bit different with you. Not only do you have this Miracle, but you have something like Clefairy with Follow Me as well, but normally Clefairy is this big wall that's kind of hard for these teams to break through, but with the Zacian, super effective Behemoth Blade, and it's something like this Clefairy that comes in is actually super dangerous for Ian. Considering the Zacian does have that +1, the Clefairy's not going to really enjoy taking up a Behemoth Blade there, and in combination with something like a Bleak Wind Storm, you're actually going to be able to do a decent amount of damage to something like the Calyrex as well, even with something like that Friend Guard, which the Clefairy is offering right now.
Yeah, and it looks like Ian was able to catch that Behemoth Blade going into Calyrex's Protect, meaning the Clefairy is wide open to redirect the next hit that's coming out. And considering Zacian is usually going to be faster than Tornadus, that's not going to be a taunt, or I guess it could be a taunt and a Behemoth Blade because of Prankster. But Clefairy is going to make sure that this Calyrex is free to do whatever it wants this turn.
I was a little scared that turn if Chris had gone for a Behemoth Blade into the Smeargle. The thought is that it can't go for Protect, not that it had it anyways, and it can't really do anything else but switch out. So that Protect there from Ian, though, predicting a Behemoth Blade in that slot, seeing super effective damage, protects against the taunt there, and if Chris doubled up in that slot, that's going to be very, very dangerous there. Behemoth Blade, though, does go into the Calyrex Shadow there, though. That does so much damage with that +1, but because of that Friend Guard, you're able to live the turn. Astral Barrage here is going to do tons of damage, +2 with the Life Orb. Gets a one-hit knockout on the Zacian there and brings Tornadus down, already down to such low amount of HP.
I think this is really one of the unique things about having Clefairy is like knowing when you don't actually have to protect the Pokemon next to it because the friend guard is just doing enough for you. I think knowing that Ian could squeeze another attack out of that Calyrex without needing to take damage on the Clefairy almost surely would have been able to go down to something like one Behemoth Blade. Now, because Ian knows his damage calcs, he just has way more resources to work with. I think it's going to be so hard for for Chris to get past this Clefairy without the Behemoth Blade dog on the field.
And truthfully, I don't know how Chris stops something with that. Now you're facing down a +3 Calyrex Shadow with a Life Orb. If this Clefairy goes for something like a helping hand to help it out even more, I don't even think something like the Soul Vest Okie Dokie is going to be able to live an attack like that.
Don't forget that Chris does still have Tailwind on his side to work with, though. I would not be shocked if we see this Okie Dokie outrunning the Calyrex. So Calyrex definitely not totally comfortable with what's going on, as we can see from this Protect.
Yeah, and we do see a Protect there from the Calyrex. As you said, the Bleakwind Storm just trying to get the knockout there on the Calyrex Shadow, considering it is low itself in the red. The Smeargle, though, is going to be able to hang on, and a knockoff there, unfortunately, going to the Calyrex slot. I think if it does go into the Clefairy that turn, that's a little bit different. We do get the opportunity now to go for a fake out with this Smeargle into something like the Okie Dokie. Then it just comes down to landing a Bleakwind here for the Tornadus.
I feel like that was a little bit of a missed opportunity from Chris, not just saying, I'm going to connect my Bleakwind, I don't need to worry about the Calyrex Shadow. However, I don't think his positioning against the Smeargle is too bad. We can see a wide guard, but we can't see a follow me at the same time. If Chris's Okie Dokie is faster than this Calyrex and Tailwind, he's still going to have a way to get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're going to see the speed tiers here as the wide guard protects against the Bleakwind from Chris's Tornadus. The knockoff, though, Okie Dokie is faster than the Calyrex Shadow.
I have to wonder if that was something that Ian was expecting to see, the Okie Dokie outrunning the Calyrex, because now we know that Ian has Smeargle on full HP, we know that there is a Clefairy in the back. There's only going to be one Pokemon that's really capable of doing damage and winning the game and has to fight against full HP Okie Dokie, Tornadus with a little bit of health, and one more unrevealed Pokemon in the back. Might be quite a tall task for this last Pokemon. Let's see who it's going to be.
Oh, it's Tornadus, and that's definitely an uphill battle. You do have something like the super effective damage from the Tornadus with its own Bleakwind Storm there from Ian's side, but it's not going to be too handy. I was even scared if Chris has something like the Rotom Wash in the back, which we didn't even get to talk about, is kind of dangerous even if Urshifu was in the back for Ian. I think something like the Rotom Wash under Tailwind is very scary for Ian to deal with, and this Tornadus even more so. This Okie Dokie with the Assault Vest, though, should be able to live a Bleakwind or two, and considering Ian has two support Pokemon on the field, one of which can click Fake Out and the other of which can not even click a damaging move at all, it's really going to come down to this Tornadus to do all the rest of the work in this game.
So we're seeing a wide guard out of Smeargle. We're going to see the Tornadus on Chris's side go for Tailwind first. On Ian's side, we don't see any Prankster move. I think that has to mean we're going to be looking at a Bleakwind Storm here. I'm really curious how much this is going to hit Okie Dokie for. Okie Dokie, not a Pokemon known for its special effect stat. Yeah, we're going to be taking a little bit over half from that Bleakwind. That is a really critical amount of damage to take.
And not only is that critical, we do know that Okie Dokie is faster than the Tornadus there, and if you're Ian, you don't really have a turn. You don't have the turns to set up a Tailwind to kind of outspeed it. So Chris using the last turn that Tornadus was on the field to set up that Tailwind, allowing Okie Dokie to outspeed it and go for something like a Poison Jab or even a Drain Punch if it thinks it wants to live another Bleakwind for some reason. Chris' last Pokemon, though, being that Choice Scarf Urshifu, is going to be tons of damage. It is super effective, Ian's Tornadus is super effective against Chris's Urshifu, so these Bleakwinds are going to hurt, but it's just a matter of actually getting them off.
Yeah, I think Ian has set this endgame up pretty well, just being able to say, like, I trust my Tornadus to connect a few Bleakwind Storms here. I think, both of these are pretty important Pokemon to hit it against. The Clefairy is exactly what you want to be using to take the fire away from your Tornadus here, because it's not like Urshifu is going to be able to do anything to knock out. Okay, Ian just saying Tornadus is taking the double up. Here comes a Surging Strikes from Urshifu. This is going to be really close, because we saw that Okie Dokie lock into a Poison Jab as well, pointed right at this Tornadus.
I mean, trusting in Friend Guard, really trusting in the Clefairy is very risky here, but let's see if it pays off. It doesn't. The Poison Jab is instead going to get the knockout. I was really scared. I think maybe what Ian was maybe predicting around is something like a upper hand potentially into the follow me. I believe that might work.
I think upper hand only works on attacking priority moves. So it's great to stop something like a slow fake out, maybe an extreme speed or a quick attack or something, not so much anything else. I think Ian honestly fumbled a little bit by not going for a follow me there at the end. I think just letting Clefairy take that double up for the team, Tornadus fire off Oblique Wind. If you just connect both, I think you're kind of in the clear for there. However, Ian kind of saw the writing on the wall at that point, saying, I don't trust my Clefairy to take on these two Pokemon without an attacking move in its arsenal. So it looks like we'll be going on to game 2.
Yeah, I figured that's how Follow Me worked as well. I was thinking maybe if you didn't go for Follow Me, maybe there was an interaction I didn't know, but happy to clear that up. And yeah, I think if you go for Follow Me there, then you're playing with Bleak Wind. I think Ian just maybe wanting to end the game a little bit quicker and maybe got a little ahead of himself. Let's see. I'm really curious how Ian can adjust in game 2 because I think you have the tools there for sure. It's just something like the Zacian is so threatening. And if you're Ian, you don't have an Incineroar on this team to necessarily lower the attack of that Zacian. So that +1 is going to be permanent. And so unless you Spore it or Follow Me it with your Clefairy or your Smeargle, the Zacian is just going to be a permanent piece on Chris's board that's going to consistently do damage. And not only is it going to consistently do damage, it's going to consistently do a lot of damage. We saw how much it did to the Calyrex even through something like the Friend Guard. And that's just a very dangerous thing to keep around. So I'm really expecting Ian to take a more proactive approach against something like the Zacian in game 2.
I think if Ian is bringing this double pairing of like Smeargle and Clefairy to support the Calyrex, I want to see him actually get a little bit more out of Follow Me there and not let the Calyrex take unnecessary damage or not let the Tornadus take unnecessary damage. When you're bringing Smeargle and Clefairy, you have to know exactly when to let them take one for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. As you see the same leads from both players here. Ian leading off with that Smeargle and Calyrex Shadow Rider, and Chris leading the Zacian and the Tornadus. Again, getting that +1 from the Intrepid Sword boost.
Chris really quickly locking in exactly the same play that he went for last game. I absolutely cannot fault him for it. I think it's a pretty safe play. I have to wonder where this taunt is going to go. I wonder if Ian is kind of seeing through this and saying, like, I don't care. So, yeah, I don't think Rillaboom is that concerned about a taunt.
It's definitely better than switching in on something like a Bleak Wind Storm here from Chris's Tornadus. We see a Terrestrialization again, the same Terrestrialization we saw game 1 there, the Terra Dark on the Tornadus, making sure the Astral Barrages aren't doing a lot of damage. But if this is anything like last turn, Ian's just going to go for a Nasty Plot again, or in this spot, I maybe think a Protect into something like the Calyrex so that you can reset the Fake Out with the Rillaboom and go for next turn. But no Protect. This is going to be a potential Nasty Plot then. Rillaboom more than fine, as you said, taking that taunt. And Rillaboom now has reset the Fake Out. So before you protect against the Fake Out from Smeargle, and now Rillaboom gets to do it again into Zacian.
Yeah, wow, that's such a gutsy play out of Ian, and he is really reaping the rewards. I think one of the weaknesses of Chris teams that we discuss is just there's not tons to do about the fake-out pressure. So this, like, fake-out Astral Barrage on the Zacian slot is so sleek. I think Chris kind of seeing, like, the Zacian might have not been long for the world if it stayed in, letting Urshifu maybe go down to this kind of combo instead. Here comes the fake-out.
And Urshifu's able to eat it with that Choice Scarf, but considering this Calyrex is Life Orb with that +2 boost, I don't think, unfortunately, this Urshifu is going to be able to eat it. We know the Tornadus is going to be able to eat it, though, with the Terra Dark. Urshifu does drop, giving Calyrex another boost.
Terra Dark to survive the Astral Barrage looks great, but it also means that Tornadus, without that flying typing, doesn't have resist against this Grassy Glide. I think that Tornadus is very easy pickings for Rillaboom if it decides it wants to take it down. Looks like Okidogi is going to be the switch-in that Chris wants to go for here. I think this makes sense. Okidogi's Pokemon that's relatively strong against Calyrex. It looks like this Calyrex is a Grass Terror, though, so if Okidogi wants to get through it, it is going to have to correctly predict whether it would stay as a Ghost and a Dark type so that you can get it with a knockoff or turn into a Grass type, and so you can get it with Poison Jab. If you do not get that right, the Calyrex is just going to be able to deal with your Okidogi.
Yeah, and the other thing, though, is regardless, even if you do get this turn right, you're still in a rough spot if you're Chris, because if you protect the Calyrex here from Ian, and say the Rillaboom goes down to a double up here from from a Poison Jab and a Bleak Wind. Guess who's in the back? Smeargle with his Fake Out, and you're kind of in a similar spot again, where you haven't even done any damage to the Calyrex this time, so the Bleak Wind didn't have knocked out like in Game 1. We do see the speed drop there on Rillaboom, no damage. Poison Jab actually going into the Calyrex slot there instead. So actually saving Ian there, not going to be able to go for Fake Out, but actually U-turn, re-pivoting out into the Fake Out. Ian saying, if you're not going to knock out my Pokemon, I'm just going to switch out and reposition myself.
U-turn is a really incredible move here because let's think, if a Rillaboom had gone for something like a Grassy Glide, you'd be stuck with a pretty awkward Rillaboom on the field next turn. It wouldn't have access to Fake Out, wouldn't have access to Redirect. Your Calyrex is just protected. By going for U-turn and saying that I don't think you're going to go for Poison Jab on my Rillaboom, Ian is able to get a knockout and reset Fake Out and get access to Follow Me. This Miracle is essentially doing everything it needs to at this point, and I think really paving the way for Calyrex Shadow to clean up. I think this game is already over.
Absolutely, and what's really interesting here as well is that Smeargle actually did get minus speed there off the Moody boosts, and the Zacian, as I mentioned before, is not going to get that Intrepid Sword boost. Ian realizing that Follow Me is the key to this game here, not going for the Fake Out. I like this a lot more than just going for a Fake Out. Just guaranteeing you redirect both damage dealers here, knowing that Chris is down to his last 2 Pokemon. Ian is guaranteed here with the Calyrex and the Fake Out in the back to just kind of stall these last turns of Tailwind and get the Fake Out and just click Astral Barrage twice and win this game too.
I'm actually really glad you brought up the Zacian not having Intrepid Sword at this point in time, because that's really something that's going to penalize Chris for trying to lead Zacian and then switch it out. When your Zacian hits the field, you kind of have to commit to it, or else you're giving up really the thing that makes the Pokemon special. Astral Barrage able to get a very easy knockout at that point and win the game for Ian. I think Ian really reaping the rewards of the risk that he was willing to take on turn 1 of the game and having a relatively clean game the rest of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think realizing exactly how strong Follow Me is there, especially in that end game where a lot of players, if you go for Fake Out in that spot, you're kind of susceptible, to taking a lot of damage or a critical hit. Even though the Zacian didn't have the +1 boost, you're a critical hit away because no front guard into the Calyrex. So just going for the Follow Me, taking advantage of the fact that your Smeargle still had the Focus Sash was really, really important there for Ian.
I think knowing to bring Rillaboom there, even though maybe Ian suspected his opponent to bring the double fighting types against, maybe Torrendus looks great against those. I think having Rillaboom for the Fake Out pressure and the U-turn Grassy Glide is just a much better toolkit here than the Torrendus. It's always interesting in a Torrendus mirror matchup like this. Both players have it on the team sheet, and there's one of them saying, I'm not even going to try and match you for Tailwind. I don't want to have to bring my own Torrendus. I'm just going to figure out another way to deal with the fact that you have a speed advantage. However, I hardly think Ian is locked into that. I'm sure Ian could figure out a way to say, hey, I do want to use my Tornadus. I think the Zacian, the Calyrex speed interaction, I don't know if that's something that we've seen, but let's say if that Zacian is trained to be absolute maximum speed and the Calyrex isn't, I probably wouldn't want to take on a Tailwind Mirror if I know my horse is going to be slower.
Yeah, absolutely. And with other tools like the Choice Scarf Urshifu here for Chris's side, could be important if both players set up something like that Tailwind and, making sure you get that final bit of damage on something like the Calyrex. Choice Scarf Urshifu being a great tool in the Tailwind for something like the Mirror, as you kind of said before. You do have to worry about things like the Rillabooms and the Follow Me's and things like that, but being able to go for Surging Strikes, which we know is a very powerful move, and kind of guarantee that you're faster than certain things in your tier is very, very important, especially, as you said, in a Tornadus Mirror.
So considering that Chris is the player that's kind of coming off a loss in that last game, is there anything that you expect him to do to kind of mix up in that last game? I think I'll mention that the Pokemon we haven't seen yet are a Life Orb Landorus and a Wash Rotom with the safety goggles, kind of classic stabs and support set. I don't know if I expect to see the Wash Rotom here, but maybe Landorus has a place. It's not so bad against Rillaboom.
Yeah, I think actually Landorus is great here, unlike Rotom, who is weak to that Rillaboom adjustment that we saw Ian bring in that game too. I think Landorus is actually in a decent spot here if you are able to get in a right spot. The problem is finding that spot for it. You're kind of forced to bring the Okie Dokie. You need some sort of bulk with that Assault Vest against the Calyrex Shadow, and you need the Terra Dark Tornadus for speed control. We see Ian go with the same lead here with that Smeargle on the Calyrex Shadow, and Chris go with the same lead of the Tornadus and the Zacian. I was actually going to suggest that maybe Chris leads something that isn't the Zacian, so you can kind of preserve its HP for the late game till you get rid of at least one of these threats, either the Rillaboom or the Smeargle.
Yeah, I think both players really sticking to their guns here. That makes sense. Like, Smeargle Calyrex is such an incredible lead in that it's not actually negative against very much. There's not a whole lot that Smeargle Calyrex can't do if you're willing to make the plays. If we see something like an Astral Barrage here, that is going to be so much free damage from this Calyrex Shadow Rider. But it is a nasty plot that gets taunted, so it's going to be a neutral turn, and Chris is going to be wide open to start going for things like Tailwind, Behemoth Blade next turn.
But notably there, the Smeargle actually gets plus speed. So you kind of have to go for a taunt into this Smeargle before it can get off those spores, because it would have been faster than Zacian unless you go for the taunt or a Tailwind there. So Tornadus is kind of, its hand is forced here a bit into the Smeargle. The Zacian, though, is going to be able to get to attack, and I really like this taunt from the Calyrex. You know Ian recognizes your taunt you've gone for both game 1 and 2, so going for the taunt into the Calyrex instead, not giving it that free nasty plot, and also not allowing it to go for protect in subsequent turns is really important in making sure something like the Zacian can continue to do damage while it's on the field with that +1.
I'll say that this is a very conservative play from Chris. I think turning your Tornadus into a Terra Dark type and going for a taunt is about the safest thing you can possibly do, and I wonder if Ian is going to be able to do anything to exploit that. Say like, hey, if you're not using your turn to put out damage, maybe I can do something else. Looks like it's going to be a Follow Me from Smeargle. Here comes the Terra Dark taunt from Tornadus. How are we going to see Calyrex respond to this?
I don't know. Calyrex really can only just attack, as we see it here come out with an Astral Barrage. Unfortunately, being taunted means that's all it can really do here. And its other attacking move is Giga Drain, which you're not really clicking into either of these other Pokemon. What's really interesting here, though, is that Protect from the Zacian. I guess you don't want to take the Astral Barrage damage, but you really want to start doing damage here. The Tailwind, you've kind of given your Tornadus the tools that's needed to set up its moves. You've gotten taunt into both of Ian's Pokemon. You can go for Tailwinds now and then Bleak Winds in subsequent turns. The cool thing, though, is that Tornadus is going to be able to eat another Astral Barrage because Ian's Pokemon doesn't have that +2. So you can go for Bleak Winds subsequent turns, considering the Smeargle kind of has to switch out now. But this Zacian is going to be able to do so much damage to whatever comes in.
Chris really did get the first 2 turns of the game so right. I think we're going to see him start reaping the rewards. Taunt down on 2 Pokemon that kind of rely on like one status move or another leaves Ian's side wide open to this Tailwind Behemoth Blade combo. If that, so it's going to be Calyrex and Smeargle both swapping out, saying that they don't want anything to do with that taunt. Someone has to take this Behemoth Blade, though. However, I think Rillaboom behind Friendguard is about the best Pokemon to be taking a Behemoth Blade that Ian has to work with.
Yeah, we see a Tailwind here come out from Chris, and this double swap does kind of, it stops you from taking damage on either your Pokemon here. The Behemoth Blade is still going to do a lot. That's about 75% or 60%.
That is behind Friendguard. That is an incredible amount of damage onto such a bulky Pokemon as Rillaboom.
And Rillaboom is just not bulky enough. Apparently, the Intrepid Sword boost is paying out dividends here for Chris's Zacian. You're just able to do so much damage, and considering this Clefairy is now just kind of a sitting duck in front of something like this Behemoth Blade, Chris is able to preserve the Tornadus, which I 100% like for that taunt later, and you get Okie Dokie in for free here, as you can assume something like a Fake Out here from Rillaboom is coming out.
Yep. Oh, no Fake Out. That's just going to be Zacian getting rid of the Rillaboom. I think Chris made a really good decision to just attack with Zacian instead of going for Protect here, because the Calyrex and the Smeargle are maybe the only Pokemon you even need to go for Protect in front of. Rillaboom and Clefairy are not doing anything about a Zacian there. I wonder what Ian is trying to set up. I think this might be a good opportunity to do something like Terry or Clefairy so that you can actually survive a Behemoth Blade. Else, you're just going to eat something like a Behemoth Blade followed up by a knockoff here. Really do not think you want to have to deal with that. But if Clefairy goes for something like a Terra Grass Follow Me, you're actually going to be able to go for an attack with your Calyrex. I don't think Zacian can do anything to finish off a Grass Clefairy in one hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Ian's really going to have to work through here is those turns of Tailwind. The good thing I will say about Ian's position is they do have that Smeargle in the back with the Focus Sash still, but as you kind of hinted to, we see Ian's Clefairy go for that Terra Grass, trying to live this Behemoth Blade as it goes for a Follow Me here. Behemoth Blade going to be the first move here from Chris's Zacian. firing off the Medical Fairy. Let's see how much it does. Brings it to a little over half. I think something like the knockoff might miss the knockout. If you went for a poison jab there, you would have just gotten the knockout, but Clefairy's going to be able to eat at least one more attack, and with no taunt to the field, Ian's Calyrex Shadow is going to go for a nasty plot.
Yeah, this Calyrex Shadow is also going to be able to... I think we're looking at one more turn of Tailwind right now. Calyrex Shadow can solve that out pretty easily. I think Chris missed a little bit of a pin on the Clefairy with something like Behemoth Blade Poison Jab combo. Do not think Clef would have been able to do anything about that. And now we are going to see Calyrex setting up for a bit of a revenge sweep. Like you said, the fact that there's no taunts on the field is really what makes this position so much better for Ian than it was in previous games or even a few turns ago where he was dealing with, potentially 2 taunts on the field.
Yeah, and I really like that. It looks detrimental in the moment, losing your Rillaboom in the way that you did. Friend Guard not really giving as much value as you maybe would have thought, but this spot here makes a lot of sense as well. Going for double protect, as you said, burning that last turn of Tailwind, making sure that you can outspeed the following turn. You can just output so much damage here from both these Pokemon. You know the Okidoki is most likely going to live this Astral Barrage, but the amount of damage that you're able to output now, and considering the fact that Tornadus has to switch in on the Astral Barrage instead of just living it outright, and considering the damage you did to it before from the previous Astral Barrage, you might get a knockout if it switches in.
I think we've also seen that Zacian is not capable of taking one of these Astral Barrages. So if you don't protect your Zacian, the enemy Calyrex is faster than you. You are just losing your Zacian without much to show for it. Here comes a Follow Me from Clefairy, which I think we would have expected. Don't think it's very hard to guess what Calyrex wants to go for here. It's going to be an Astral Barrage. Let's see how much this does to Okidoki.
It's going to be a ton of damage here. Astral Barrage firing up into the Okidoki. Brings him down to 4 HP. I mean, hey, Okidoki, he's that dog. He's got that dog in him. The Poison Jab does fire off into the Clefairy, though. Super effective Poison Jab into the Terra Grass Clefairy is going to be enough to knock it out. And that means Ian's last Pokemon, that Smeargle with the Focus Sash still intact, he is going to be able to come in, and with that Fake Out it's actually not the best for Ian, considering it's the last 2 Pokemon. I mean, you do get the Fake Out, you're going to get a potential double knockout here, but depending on Chris's last Pokemon, if it's something like the Urshifu and the Tornadus is able to live on, you're really trying to fight out of the gutters here if you're Chris. It is looking in Ian's favor, but, it's never over till it's over.
I think Ian has this game in the bag. I think something like a Fake Out on Zacian here seems really telegraphed. Unless this Okidoki is faster than the Smeargle, to use an upper hand to stop the Fake Out, but Smeargle's usually a Pokemon that's trained to be a little bit faster than an Okidoki. So I think Ian has very, very little downside in going for something like a Fake Out on Zacian and just another Astral Barrage. You know that that's what you need to get the knockouts here.
And
it
very
looks
importantly,
like Zacian is thinking about going for a double protect here.
Yeah, and very importantly, no Fake Out, not risking the upper hand. That's exactly what I was thinking, but that's assuming Zacian is able to eat this Astral Barrage, which it is not, unfortunately. Is going to be a double knockout there for Ian, and that's going to be a +4 Life Orb Calyrex Shadow staring you down if you are Ian. And with something like the Follow Me here on the Smeargle, it unfortunately is not going to be enough for Chris to kind of break through. Something like the Choice Scarf Urshifu cannot break through both the cannot break through the Smeargle and the Calyrex Shadow.
That's exactly the problem for Chris here. This Miracle is just completely disabling the Urshifu, and it's not like Tornadus. Even with Dark-type, even with Liquid Storm, it is just not ready to fight this Calyrex Shadow right now. I do not exactly see how Chris is going to be stopping a Follow Me Astral Barrage combo, and kind of like you mentioned last turn, I think it was really clever of Ian to not even use Fake Out and risk maybe getting hit by an upper hand from a really fast Okidoki. There's just nothing to do about the Follow Me Barrage here.
Yeah, absolutely, and at +4, I'd be very surprised if something like this Tornadus did hang on. Even if it did, I don't think the Tornadus can 1v1 this Calyrex Shadow. The Calyrex Shadow has to be like negative special defense nature, plus like a Bleakwind Storm crit to potentially do enough damage. I mean, the Life Orb chip is adding up there on the Calyrex Shadow, as his Astral Barrage goes out into both of Chris's Pokemon here. Able to get the double knockout, though, and that is going to be a 2-1 victory for Ian there in our round 2 of the Collector's Emporium Mega Cup.
Yeah, Calumet showing exactly like how happy it can be to try and pull one of these like 2 versus 4 come from behinds. If you have enough damage down on the opposing team and they don't have like a wide guard or anything to do about Astral Barrage, you could just click Astral Barrage over and over again. I think that might be one of the weaknesses of Chris's team, that there's not a ton of these Pokemon that are like really slowing down that Astral Barrage damage. And at the in the 11th hour of Game 3, Ian's deciding that this was the way that he was going to break down Chris's team and win the match, showing why he is a player capable of doing things like top-cutting regionals.
Yeah, and that was a really well-played game as well. Even from that game 1, we actually saw Ian on the back foot. So to take games 2 and 3 and win the set on top of that really shows Ian's skill. But really well played from Chris as well. I think that Okie Dokie did a lot more than either of us expected in that set. Actually eating that Astral Barrage and then being able to actually do a decent amount of damage. I think if you did go for a Poison Jab into that Clefairy on that one turn, I think that maybe actually would have changed the game. And maybe
absolutely. It would have been a huge deal if that had been like the pin on Clefairy instead of leaving it on 1 HP. Just because one more turn of Follow Me doesn't matter if your Pokemon's on like 1 HP, that is going to be so valuable buying one more attack for your restricted.
Yeah, but without further ado, that's going to be our round 2. Thank you guys for watching, but stay tuned for round 3 soon. We're going to cut to a quick break real quick here for our Collectors Emporium Mega Cup. Stay tuned. We'll talk to you in a bit.